Hello guys, and welcome back to Reading Club. So today I'm going to read you Daisy and the Trouble with Piggy Banks, Chapter 6 to Chapter 10. Chapter 6. Going to bed early on Saturday night was actually really handy because it gave me some serious time to think of some serious ways of making some serious money. Once I put my pajamas on and got into bed, I began to have loads of money-making ideas. Trouble is, I wasn't sure if any of them would work. The trouble with opening a zoo is, if you're going to charge people to come in to look at animals, you really need to have lots of animals for them to look at. I could only think of 2 animals. Mrs. Pike's cat, Tiptoes, and my friend Dylan's snake, Shooter. Plus, I wasn't very sure if Mrs. Pike and Dylan would even lend them to me. The trouble with starting a pet hairdresser is I'm only allowed to cut things with the red scissors. Plus, I'm not sure my mom would let me use the Hoover again, which means I wouldn't have anything to suck all the pet hairs up after I cut them, even if I got the red scissors to actually cut. The trouble with becoming a gold miner is there aren't any gold mines in my street. The trouble with winning the lottery is my mom always buys the wrong tickets. And the trouble with inventing a new invention that everyone in the world would want to buy is I couldn't think of anything to invent, apart from loom bands, but they've already been done. When my mom came upstairs to say goodnight, I thought she was going to go on and on about washing up liquid and sucking up oranges and squirting pads, but she didn't. Instead of telling me off again, she gave me 50 pence for trying, even if I hadn't tried very well. She told me that when she was my age, there were loads of things she wanted her mom and dad to buy her that her mom and dad couldn't afford, like the latest bike and the latest record and the latest clothes and the latest tortoise. Daisy, you do know that if I could afford to give you the money to buy a new scooter, I would, don't you? Said my mom. Yes, I said. And you know that money doesn't grow on trees, don't you? She asked. Yes, I said. And you do know that birthdays and Christmases wouldn't feel half as special if children were bought presents all the time, don't you? Not sure, I said. Well, you should be sure, said Mom. How's about, I said, suddenly having the best idea of my life. How's about if you gave me all the money I need to buy an immense scooter right now and I don't have any presents for my next 3 birthdays? Or Christmas, I only need another 99.49 pounds. You can give it to me in a cube, or coins, or notes and coins, or coins and notes. Whatever is easier for whatever is easiest for you. I really, honestly don't mind. Plus, I promise never to clean the car again, or wash up, or hoover, or do any chores around the house again ever. Good night, Daisy, said Mom. Chapter 7. When Gabby came round on Sunday morning, she didn't just bring her squirting microscooter, she brought her piggy bank too. You can't have all the money inside, she said, shaking her piggy bank and making a jingle. You can have all the money inside, she said, shaking her piggy bank and making a jingle. I don't know how much there is, but you can have every penny I have got if you don't want it. Sorry, I have a sore throat. At first, I didn't know what to say. I knew Gabby was my best friend, but this was the kindest and bestest thing she had ever done for me in the world. Quick, bring your scooter indoors, I said before she changed her mind. Am I allowed to bring my scooter indoors? Asked Gabby. It's okay, my mom's in bed, I said. She always has a lie-in on a Sunday morning. As soon as Gabby knew that the coast was clear, she lifted her scooter over the front step and drove it into the lounge. Are there any 10-pound notes in there? I asked as Gabby turned her piggy bank upside down. Just coins, said Gabby, pulling out the stopper and the piggy's tummy and giving it a shake. Here's one, she said, as the first coin fell onto the sofa. Here's another one, she smiled, as another coin fell into my hand. One by one, coin by coin, a pile of money began to build up on the sofa. Here's a big one, Gabby said, as a 50-pence bounced off her knee. My mom gave me one of those last night for doing some chores, I said. Now you've got two, said Gabby. Now you've got three, she laughed as another 50-pence plopped out of the piggy bank and onto her lap. How much do you reckon there is? I said, arranging the coins in different piles. Start counting, said Gabby, giving the piggy bank one last shake to make sure there was no money left inside. The trouble with counting up piggy bank money is it's easy to lose count, especially if Gabby starts taking money from the piles you've already counted. Double, especially if 3 of the coins are foreign. The trouble with foreign coins is they don't speak the same language. How much is €1 worth in English money? I asked. I don't know, said Gabby. How much is a United States of America cent worth? I asked. Less than €1, I think, said Gabby. And what about 2 rands? I asked. There's no such thing as rands, is there? Asked Gabby. Well, that's what it says on here, I said, holding up a silver-colored coin with a picture of an antelope on it. When we turned the coin over, we saw that it was speaking South African. It's got to be worth quite a lot if it's got an antelope on it, I said. Oh my gosh, said Gabby, clapping her hand to her mouth and bouncing up and down the sofa. Oh my gosh, what? I said, grabbing our English money as it started to slide off the cushions. What if it's a spelling mistake, said Gabby. What if instead of it saying rands, it's meant to say grand? Do you know how much a grand is, Daisy? No, I said. It's 1,000 English pounds. 1,000 English pounds? I gasped. So if it's 2 grand, it would be worth 2,000 English pounds, squealed Gabby. I'm going to wake Mom, I said, racing out of the lounge and leaping up the stairs. Chapter 8. The trouble with waking Mom again is you need a really good reason to do it, especially on a Sunday morning. Trouble is, I thought I had 2,000 good reasons. Mom! Mom! I said, charging into her bedroom with the antelope coin and shaking her as hard as I could. Is this 2 rands or 2 grands? The trouble with shaking my mom as hard as I could is that when she opens her eyes, her eyeballs kind of roll the wrong way, which is really weird and a bit scary. As well what? She said, sitting up in bed and rubbing her eyes. Is this coin worth 2 rands or 2 grands? I asked. Because if it's worth 2 grands, I can buy a squirting monkey scooter right now, this very morning, and I can give you your 50 pence back. Once my mom had stopped rubbing her eyes, I gave her the coin with the antelope on to look at. It's 2 rands, she sighed. How much is that worth in English money? I asked. About a halfpence, I should think, said my mom. What, even with an antelope on it? I said. The picture of an antelope must be worth at least 25 pence. Even with an antelope on it, she said, sliding down under the covers again and going back to sleep. And it's not an antelope, it's an eland. When I got back to the lounge and told Gabby that it wasn't a spelling mistake, it was 2 rands, she looked as disappointed as I felt. You've got 2 pounds. You got 2.76 pounds, she said, pointing to the money she had piled up on the sofa. A lot of the coins were pennies and 5 pences. Does that include the 50 pence my mom gave me yesterday? I asked. Said Gabby gloomily. The trouble with taking 2.76 pounds away from 99.99 pounds is it looks easy unless you actually have to do it. Once we found my mom's calculator, we worked out that I still needed to find another 97.23 pounds before I could buy an actual squirting scooter just like Gabby's. 97.23 pounds. Where was I going to get that from? Have you looked down the back of your sofa? Said Gabby. There's always money down the back of our sofa at home. It falls out of people's pockets without them knowing. Really? I gasped, throwing away the little cushions, and then heaving the 2 big fat sofa cushions onto the floor. But I was wasting my time. The only things I managed to find were a paperclip, half a peanut, some crumbs, and some fluff, which weren't worth anything, not even to a flea. Maybe some money has gone right down the back of your sofa and completely out of reach, said Gabby. What, you mean more underneath the sofa than down the back? I asked. I guess so. The trouble with underneath of sofas is they are covered with material too, which means if you lie on your back, crawl underneath, and look up, you still can't see if anything has fallen down the back. I'll get some scissors, I said. The trouble with scissors is I'm only allowed to use the red ones. Trouble is there is no way the red scissors would ever have been able to cut through the material underneath of the sofa. Luckily, my mom was still asleep, so I used the big scissors from the kitchen drawer instead. Trouble is, even when I'd cut all the way along the back and down both sides, I still couldn't find any money. All I found was a piece of fingernail, loads more crumbs and fluff, plus a piece of cheese and onion crisp. I knew it was cheese and onion because it fell into my mouth while I was cutting. Ew. I give up, I said, crawling out from underneath the sofa. I've cut all I can cut, and I've looked all I can look. The trouble with cutting all you can cut and looking all you can look is when you stand up again and look down, the sofa doesn't look quite the same, because after you've done your cutting, a big flap of material will be hanging down. I think you need to get some sellotape, said Gabby with a bit of a nervous face. The trouble with sellotape is it's all right for sticking bits of paper together, but it doesn't really work on the underneath of sofas, which meant the flap kept falling down again. I think you should get some nails, said Gabby, looking even more nervous. The trouble with nails is once you've got some out of the shed and then crawled back under the sofa and looked up, there isn't enough room to bang your hammer, which meant the nails wouldn't go in properly, which meant the flap kept flapping down all over the place again, which meant there was only one thing left I could do. The trouble with using the big scissors to cut the material under the sofa right off is it makes you realize what a big piece of material it is. I think we should go and play on my scooter, said Gabby, scooting across the carpet and heading for my front door. I think you're right, I said, rolling up the underneath sofa material and stuffing it under my t-shirt. Chapter 9. When we got outside on the pavement, we raced right to the top of my road and hid the piece of material in a hedge. It's okay, my mom will never know, I said to Gabby, pushing the material a little bit farther out of sight. But what if she wakes up, goes downstairs into the lounge, turns upside down, lies on her back, crawls under the sofa, and looks up? Gabby asked. Why would she ever do that? I asked. The only thing my mom ever does when she gets up is go into the kitchen, make a cup of coffee, and sit on the stool. Sometimes she makes some toast as well. But she never goes into the lounge, lies on her back, crawls under the sofa, and looks up. If she did, she would spill her coffee. Once I reassured Gabby that we were never going to get found out, she began to feel a lot better. Squirty time, she said, squirting me down the front of my t-shirt and then scooting as fast as she could to the other end of the road. The trouble with being squirted with water is it means you need to fight back. So I turned into a killer shark, but Gabby said I couldn't because sharks can't live on pavements. So I turned into a werewolf, but Gabby said werewolves only come out at night. So I turned into a robot. Gabby said water makes robots rust. By the time I turned into a zombie mermaid, I was soaked. We need to fill up again, said Gabby, pressing the squirter button as hard as she could, getting hardly any squirts to squirt at me at all. The trouble with filling up again is we didn't really want to go back to the house in case my mom was there, lying down on the front lounge, crawling under the sofa and looking up. And Gabby's house was too far away. I know what we can fill up from, I said, taking my turn in the scooter and scooting down the road to the hedge of Mrs. Pike's house. The trouble with borrowing someone's hosepipe is you should really ask first. Trouble is, it was a Sunday morning. It was only about 10 o'clock, and I was sure Mrs. Pike liked having a lie-in just as much as my mom. Plus, she might have said no. The hosepipe Mrs. Pike had lent Mom to rinse her car with was curled up on a special hosepipe holder right next to her front door. There was an outside water tap just above it with one end to the hosepipe already attached, which meant all I had to do was turn the tap on and curl the hosepipe, poke it under the fence into my garden, and then run out of Mrs. Pike's garden as fast as I could without being seen. When I crept into Mrs. Pike's front garden, all of her curtains were still drawn, so I was almost absolutely, definitely certain that she was still asleep. It's lucky I'm a really fast runner, because the moment I had uncurled the hosepipe and poked it under the fence, Gabby squealed at me with big, bulging eyes and ducked down. Can you believe it? Mrs. Pike had opened her bedroom curtains at the exact same time I was running out of her garden. As soon as I got through the gate, I dived down onto the pavement and laid down next to Gabby. Did she see us? I panted. I don't think so, Gabby gasped. After about 5 minutes of lying on the pavement, we decided that Mrs. Pike couldn't possibly have seen us. Let's crawl back to my garden and fill up, I said. When we got to my gate, we stood up and raced over the fence. Bagsy, I'll fill up first, I said, pulling the squirty end of the hosepipe under the fence and twisting the nozzle with my fingers till the water started to squirt through it. Bagsy, I undo the lid off the water tank, said Gabby, lifting the lid and then standing the scooter up straight so that the maximum amount of water could squirt in. Squirting water into Gabby's scooter with a hosepipe was really easy, plus there were loads of other things in the garden to squirt as well, like the grass, the flowers, 3 bumblebees, and a spider's web in Gabby's back. That's cheating, squealed Gabby, jumping backwards and running towards the gate. I'm going to get you for that. Get me all you want, I laughed. We've got all the squirts we could ever need. Chapter 10. The trouble with having all the squirts you could ever need is it makes you just want to keep on squirting. It was about 2:30 before Mrs. Pike realized that we were using a hosepipe to fill up Gabby's scooter. By then, we had already filled up around 100 times. We played zombie mermaids, zombie sea lions, zombie starfish, zombie penguins, zombie pelicans, zombie otters, zombie lemmings, zombie coast guards, and normal pirates who turned into zombies after they had dug up a treasure chest full of zombie souls. Honestly, Gabby and me had never escorted each other so much in our lives. In fact, by the time Mrs. Pike found out that we were using her hosepipe, the squirts had nearly gone right through to our knickers. I don't know how my mom hadn't noticed we were using the hosepipe before Mrs. Pike did. I mean, when she came out into the front garden around 11 to see if I had any breakfast, she didn't say a thing, even about us being wet. Mind you, my mom never seems to notice very much at all when she still has her dressing gown on. When she came outside again around 12:30 to give us a plate of sandwiches and some crisps, she still didn't notice Mrs. Pike's hosepipe nozzle poking under her fence. Mind you, I think she might have been more interested in getting us some towels. When Mrs. Pike came out of her house for the first time on Sunday, she noticed that we were using her hosepipe straight away, mostly because she had tripped over it as soon as she stepped out of her front door. That's the trouble with hose pipes. If you stretch them across the front door, they can turn into something quite dangerous. A bit like a tripwire or a booby trap or a zombie trap. Anyway, as soon as Mrs. Pike had picked herself up off her lawn, she went to have a chat with my mom. Gabby and me were banned from outdoor taps and indoor taps after that. The trouble with being banned from outdoor taps and indoor taps is it means once you run out of water, there is no more water to play with. Which means you need to make your last tank of water really special. As soon as we realized we only had one tank of water left to play with, we sat on the pavement outside my gate and wondered how brilliant we could make our very last squirts. That's when I had the best squirting idea I've ever had. What about if we put some orange in with our water? I said. If we pour some orange squash into our water tank and make the water all orange tasting, we can aim squirts into our mouths and that'll all down our fronts and backs. It'll be brilliant. And thirst quenching if we're really good at our aims. Gabby thought it was a brilliant idea too. We were banned from orange squash as well after that. Think really, really hard, I said, lying down on the lawn to dry out. There must be some more ways for me to get the money I need. But we had run out of ideas. I need to go home, said Gabby, peeping over the window ledge to see if my mom had left the lounge. You can still keep all the money from my piggy bank, and I promise I'll start saving up for you again as soon as I get in. It was the best and kindest promise Gabby had ever made me. Remember, you only need 97.23 pounds more, she said, scooting her scooter towards my garden gate. I'm sure I will be able to think of an idea that will get you the rest of the money you need. Tell me about it at school tomorrow, I said. You bet, said Gabby, holding up her empty piggy bank and waving it. Well, that's the end of this channel. If you liked it, please click many likes and subscribe, reading club. I'll come back tomorrow with a new and improved channel. Bye, everybody.